Welcome viewers to another JNR Railway custom model, and here is another Gensokyo Railway series character, Cobol. Cobol is a Japanese National Railways DE11, the D meaning diesel, the E means that it has 5 axles, 3 in the front, 2 in the back, essentially making him a Kobo, which was part of the inspiration for Cobol's name. Not only is it a neat reference to an old computing language, but it's also referencing his wheel arrangement. Here I used derrick as the basis because Cobol has the cab in the middle with the engine-y bits on the front and back. So I used derrick, an old beat-up derrick, as my basis. Now this is in JNR freight livery with gray on the bottom, red on the top, with a white stripe going along. Little black windows, you know. So Cobol was introduced in the Gensokyo Railway series installment called Mainline Engines. He was the engine that Haruka and Haruki were making fun of. And essentially Cobol is the Boko of the series, even right down to being a diesel with a rather unusual wheel arrangement, you know? So, essentially that's what the model is, and comparing it to my Ichihiro, if I could just get the little bugger out, comparing him to my Ichihiro model, I feel like is a little better, you know? A little better quality. This took several coats of paint to do, mostly red, mostly white. Those were the two colors that needed repainting the most. The gray, on the other hand, seems to be able to cover the original paintwork very nicely and thus needed less coats. And the thing that really is bothersome for me is that making gray paint is kind of a pain to do because you gotta mix the black and the white just right. So if you're gonna do multiple coats, you have to somehow memorize the ratio between black and white paint, just so that way you get a consistent color. Because on Ichihiro, you may not notice it on the camera, but I actually used a slightly lighter blue when I'm touching up the side tanks a bit. So it's a little inconsistent on right here compared to right here. Also, because of the nature of the blue color, I didn't have to repaint the wheels. And the same goes for derrick because, you know, black wheels. That's the beauty. The beauty of bases that did not have painted wheels is that you don't have to... Oh dear, there's a crack in the wheel. I hope that doesn't develop into anything. So, the thing about engine bases that don't need color, like on the wheels, like class DE11s, or hell, even most British mainline diesels, and hell, if you want to take my homeland into account, that also applies to most American diesel engines, or locomotives in general. I mean, you only, like in America, I swear, every locomotive from the late 18th century onwards, all of them were black. Like, I swear. Only when America's dieselization of the railways, which happened during the, the the mid to late 30s and throughout the 40s, that's when I feel like a lot of the colorful liveries came back. And if they're not that, it's either like this weird brownish green color, especially on like the GE ones and a lot of the electrical engines. And then there's this, and then before the late 1800s, I feel like there was a lot more variety in color, like there being like in red and like gray, you know. But anyway, rant aside, this I feel like is one of my best models yet. I'm currently working on the Hiroto model, which should be done by the end of this weekend. I'll make a video of that. So yeah, this is, let's get all my custom models in a row. I have completed 3 custom models. Now the thing about the other engines, like a Chemi is kind of weird because I based them off of a 440, yet I was originally going to base them off, I realized that I should have based them off of a C50, which has a mogul, which is a 260 wheel arrangement. So I'm not sure if I should just use James's model and put some paint down, put some tape down on his cab, just so that way it looks like a block, just like the C50s, or take another Edwards model, buy an X-Acto knife, and cut the face and replace it with James's face. I'm going to probably go with the easier route of just redesigning him into a C50 and just explain something like he had a rebuild or something. Or maybe this takes place in alternate reality of the Gensokyo Railway series where he was just a C50 from the start. Anyway, these are the custom models, and over here, I'm just going to grab some of the models that don't need modification because they're pretty much almost exactly the same as their Gensokyo Railway series counterpart. Diziru, which is just a diesel model unmodified. Chrysanthemum, or Chris, as she likes to be called sometimes, is just Daisy without any changes. And Maybach is just Derek without any modifications. Albeit this British Railways logo could be just, you know, blotted out. But I'm not modifying my last remaining Derek, especially one in this good quality. Daisy's a little beat up, but, you know, I'd pretty much do the same thing as I did with the Ichihiro model, and just be painting it the same color. Which applies to Kenta, which I'm just going to probably just buy another Henry model and paint him. Albeit, depending on the quality of the model, I think I might just paint over the number 3 on his tender and replace it with a Roman numeral. You know, because the two engines that share the same paintwork as their Railway Series / Thomas and Friends counterparts is Ichihiro and Kenta, which share the same paint scheme as their Thomas counterparts, which is Thomas and Henry, meaning both of them are green with red stripes. Hiroto I'm painting right now. I'm using an old style Gordon because it didn't have the tapered firebox shape, which is good. For those custom modelers who need an engine but don't want like the weird firebox shapes like Henry or Gordon's, get the old style Gordon. It doesn't have any of the weird shapes on the boilers, and you really, you know, don't have to do anything except repaint them. Maybe use some cardboard or wood, or more wood, like balsa wood, if you want to like add a smoke deflector instead of smoke deflectors or anything. So yeah. So going back to, yeah. And the weird thing about engines like Ahiru, which for the sake of not having to do a lot of surgery, I was going to take this old beaten up duck, as you can tell, because I use beat up models from my childhood. They tend to come with either, in this case, very faded paintwork, chipped, and lack of eyebrows, and faded eyes. But here is not a pannier tank. Instead, it's just a regular engine with side tanks. I mean, I could probably simulate that by just using some tape and painting and just covering this part up. That would pretty much show that he's a pannier. Kiyoshi is not a saddle tank like Percy, but is a tank engine with side tanks. And for Haruki and Haruka, which are not, again, saddle tanks, like the thing about them is that the closest thing I can probably use is a bunch of Ivo Hue models that I could just do plastic surgery with. But at the same time, Ivo Hue models are rare, and I really don't want to destroy the models, especially if I screw up such rare models, such good-looking models, and use them for the purposes. So I may just have to cut my losses and repaint some old Bill and Ben models, some old Percy models, maybe repaint this old Duck model to be a hero. Also, a little fun fact, because in Japan's history they never had any steam trams, there's no Toby XP, meaning in all the stories that would have required a Toby XP, either a yokai is involved, a Toho character, like in Dirty Objects. Instead of Toby at the beginning, it's Cyrano. And, you know, Cyrano's kind of a cheeky fairy, you know, sort of like Thomas, except can manipulate ice, can fly, and is a lolly. You don't get that. Maybe if Audrey started drinking more, then there would be more lollies in Thomas, but I'm not complaining, and quite frankly, that is kind of weird. That being said, though, I might just have to cut my losses and just work with the models that pre-exist. Anyway, this concludes my Custom Wind Railways model showcase, I guess. Goodbye and good night.